The early morning sunlight crept into Elena Vargas's modest apartment, casting a soft glow over the scuffed wooden floors and the faded floral wallpaper. Elena sat at her tiny kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of instant coffee. The warmth soothed her fingers, chilled from the drafty window that rattled whenever a gust of wind rolled through. A calendar pinned to the wall caught her eye, its dates marked with scribbled reminders: rent due in 2 weeks, a doctor's appointment she couldn't afford, and the notation "call mom," circled in red ink. She took a deep breath and forced herself to focus on the here and now. Today was grocery day, the most carefully planned outing of her week. Her job at the local bakery, though steady, barely stretched to cover her modest rent and utilities, leaving little room for indulgences. Her pantry was nearly empty, save for a bag of rice and a can of beans, but she'd long since learned to make do. Elena was resourceful because she had to be. She slung her well-worn canvas bag over her shoulder, grabbed her shopping list, and set off for the neighborhood market. The market was bustling with life, as it always was on Saturday mornings. Vendors shouted deals, baskets clattered into one another, and children tugged at their parents' sleeves, pointing at colorful cereal boxes stacked high on the shelves. Elena weaved through the aisles with practiced ease, plucking items off the shelves that matched the exact specifications of her budget and list. She rarely lingered, unwilling to tempt herself with anything outside her means. As she turned into the baby care aisle on her way to the checkout, a muffled sound caught her attention. It was a baby's soft cries, the kind that tugged at the heart rather than grated on the nerves. She glanced up to see a young woman holding an infant bundled tightly in a threadbare blue blanket. The woman was staring at a tub of baby formula on the shelf, biting her lip as she checked her phone. Elena slowed her cart, unsure why she felt compelled to watch. The woman's shoulders were tense, her face pale with exhaustion. After a moment, she reached for the formula and placed it in her basket with trembling hands. Her baby whimpered, and she cooed softly, adjusting his blanket to shield him from the cold. Elena felt a pang of recognition. She had never been a mother, but she knew that look, the weight of the world pressing down on someone barely managing to stand beneath it. She didn't mean to follow the woman to the checkout line, but something about the scene gripped her. She stood behind the woman, watching her place the formula and a small pack of diapers on the counter. "That'll be $34.78, the cashier said briskly, punching buttons on the register. The woman slid a card from her wallet and handed it over, her eyes darting nervously around the room. The cashier swiped it once, twice, then frowned. "Declined," she said flatly, handing the card back. The woman's breath hitched. Could you try again?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. The cashier sighed but obliged. When the machine beeped again, the woman's face crumpled. "I'm sorry," she stammered, her voice cracking. "Could you just take off the diapers? Maybe that will." "Don't worry about it," Elena said, stepping forward before she could think twice. Both the cashier and the woman looked at her in surprise. "I've got it," Elena said firmly, already pulling her wallet from her bag. She slid a couple of crumpled bills across the counter and added her own groceries to the belt. "Oh no," the woman said, panic flashing across her face. "I can't let you do that. It's too much." "You're not letting me," Elena said with a small smile. "I'm choosing to." The woman hesitated, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment, but she didn't argue further. She simply adjusted her grip on her baby and murmured, "Thank you." The cashier rang up the items and handed the bag to the woman, who clutched it like it was made of gold. As the three of them stepped away from the counter, Elena finally introduced herself. "I'm Elena," she said gently. "And you are?" "Amara," the woman said, shifting her baby so Elena could see his face. He was tiny, with chubby cheeks and dark eyes that blinked up at her with innocent curiosity. "And this is Liam." "He's beautiful," Elena said, smiling at the baby before turning back to Amara. "Are you okay? I mean really okay?" Amara hesitated, as though trying to decide whether Elena truly wanted to know or was just being polite. After a moment she sighed. "I'm managing." Things have been hard since my husband got laid off. I've been trying to find work, but with Liam so young, it's been nearly impossible. Some weeks we scrape by, but other weeks. Her voice trailed off, and she blinked quickly, as if to hold back tears. Elena reached out and placed a hand on Amara's arm. You're doing your best. That counts for something. And if you ever need help again, don't be afraid to ask. Amara opened her mouth to respond but seemed overwhelmed. Instead, she nodded, her lips curving into a grateful smile. Thank you, Elena, for everything. The two women parted ways outside the store, and as Elena walked home, her own troubles felt lighter. Her bank account was a little thinner, but her heart was full. That small gesture had been enough to turn Amara's day around, and it reminded Elena that even in the darkest moments, kindness had the power to illuminate the path ahead. What she didn't know was that her simple act of generosity would become the spark for a series of events that would transform not only her life but Amara's as well. The afternoon sun bathed Elena's apartment in a warm, golden light as she unpacked her groceries. The bag of rice and loaf of bread joined their modest companions in the pantry, and the few vegetables she had bought were neatly arranged in the small refrigerator. As she closed the door, her thoughts wandered back to Amara and Liam. Elena couldn't shake the image of Amara's trembling hands as she reached for the formula or the quiet relief that had washed over her when the cashier handed her the bag. It was a small act, Elena told herself, barely enough to make a dent in her own tight budget. But to Amara, it seemed to have meant the world. That evening, Elena prepared a simple dinner of rice and sautéed vegetables, her thoughts still circling around the encounter. She found herself wondering how Amara and Liam were doing. Was there more she could have done? Should she have given her phone number or invited Amara over for coffee? Elena shook her head, pushing the thoughts aside. People didn't always want to share their struggles, and she didn't want to intrude. The next morning, Elena arrived at the bakery a little earlier than usual. It was a quaint shop on a busy street corner, with cheerful pastel walls and the smell of fresh bread wafting through the air. Elena loved the work, even though the pay barely covered her bills. She found comfort in the simple rhythms of kneading dough, arranging pastries, and chatting with the regular customers who brightened her days. Around mid-morning, the bell above the door jingled, and Elena glanced up from the counter where she was restocking a tray of muffins. A man stepped inside, his broad frame silhouetted by the sunlight streaming through the glass door. He was tall, dressed in a clean but modest coat, and his warm, confident smile immediately put her at ease. "Good morning," the man said, his voice deep but gentle. He approached the counter, glancing briefly at the trays of bread and pastries before looking directly at her. "Are you Elena Vargas?" Elena blinked, surprised. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" "I hope so," he said with a chuckle, reaching into his coat pocket. He pulled out an envelope and placed it on the counter. "My wife Amara told me about you." Elena's breath caught. "Amara? Is everything all right?" "She's fine," the man reassured her quickly. "More than fine, actually. She couldn't stop talking about what you did for her yesterday. She said you probably wouldn't think much of it, but it meant everything to us." Elena felt her cheeks flush. "Oh, it was nothing, really. I couldn't stand to see her struggling like that. I've been there." The man's expression softened. "That's exactly why I'm here. I'm David, by the way. Amara told me you've been through tough times yourself. She also mentioned that you've got experience in office work." Elena nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. "I used to, yes, before I started working here." David slid the envelope closer to her. "I run a small logistics company, and we're looking for someone to manage our office operations. It's not a glamorous job, but it's steady work, and we need someone reliable. Amara thinks you'd be perfect for it. If you're interested, the position is yours." Elena stared at him, her thoughts a whirlwind. She hesitated to open the envelope, her fingers brushing over its edges. "You're offering me a job? Just like that?" David chuckled. "I believe in paying kindness forward. Besides, Amara trusts you, and that's enough for me." Her heart pounded as she carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a neatly typed letter outlining the job description, the responsibilities, and the salary. Her breath caught again. It was enough to cover her rent and still have money left for savings. For a moment, Elena was speechless. "I don't know what to say," she finally murmured. "Say you'll think about it," David said with an encouraging smile. "It's not charity, Elena. It's an opportunity for both of us. My company needs someone with your skills, and you deserve a break." Elena nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." "That's all I ask," David said. He slid a business card across the counter. "Call me if you decide you're interested. And thank you again for what you did for my family." As David left the bakery, Elena felt a surge of conflicting emotions. The letter in her hands represented a chance at stability, at something better than scraping by day after day. But it also felt overwhelming, like a leap into the unknown. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the envelope rested on her bedside table. She thought about Amara and Liam, about David's kind smile, and about the promise of a job that could change her life. After hours of tossing and turning, Elena finally made up her mind. The next morning, she picked up the phone and dialed the number on the card, her hands trembling as she waited for someone to pick up. A friendly voice answered on the other end, and within minutes, an interview was scheduled for the following week. The day of the interview arrived quickly, and Elena found herself standing outside a modest office building. She smoothed down the blazer she had borrowed from her neighbor and adjusted the strap of her bag. Her palms were clammy, and her heart thudded in her chest. It had been years since her last formal interview, and the prospect of stepping back into the professional world felt both thrilling and terrifying. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open and entered the building. The receptionist greeted her warmly and directed her to a small conference room. Elena was surprised to see both David and another man already waiting for her. "Good to see you again," David said, standing to shake her hand. "This is Henry, our operations manager. He'll be working closely with you if you decide to join us." "Nice to meet you," Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. The interview began, and Elena quickly realized how much she had underestimated herself. As David and Henry asked questions about her previous experience, she found the answers came naturally. She spoke about managing schedules, handling budgets, and coordinating with teams, all skills she had honed in her years at the office supply company. The more she talked, the more her confidence grew. By the end of the meeting, both men were smiling. "You're exactly what we're looking for," David said. "If you're interested, the job is yours." Elena blinked, hardly daring to believe it. I'd love to. Thank you." David handed her a folder containing the official offer and other paperwork. "We're excited to have you on board. Take some time to look these over, and we'll see you Monday morning." As Elena left the office, a wave of relief and excitement washed over her. She clutched the folder tightly, barely able to contain the grin that spread across her face. Her first day at the company was a whirlwind of activity. The office was small but efficient, with a tight-knit team that welcomed her warmly. Elena quickly found her footing, organizing schedules, streamlining processes, and handling client communications with ease. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of purpose and stability. With her new salary, Elena was able to catch up on her bills and even save a little each month. She finally replaced the worn shoes she'd been patching for years and treated herself to a small bouquet of fresh flowers for her kitchen table, a luxury she hadn't allowed herself in a long time. On weekends, Elena made a habit of visiting the market. She hoped to run into Amara again, not just to express her gratitude but to share how much their encounter had changed her life. It wasn't until a crisp Saturday morning, nearly a month after her first day at the company, that she finally saw Amara. Amara was sitting on a bench near the market entrance, Liam bundled up in her lap. Elena waved, and Amara's face lit up in recognition. "Elena," she called, standing to greet her. They embraced warmly, and Elena crouched to say hello to Liam, who giggled and reached for her scarf. "I've been hoping to see you," Amara said. "How are you?" "I'm good," Elena replied, her smile widening. "Better than I've been in a long time. I actually took the job at your husband's company." Amara's eyes sparkled. I knew he'd offer it to you. He couldn't stop talking about how capable you sounded. The two women sat down, catching up on each other's lives. Amara shared that things had started to improve for her family as well. David's company had secured a new client, and while they still had challenges, they were beginning to find their footing. I can't thank you enough, Amara said softly, her voice filled with emotion. What you did that day, it gave us hope. More than you know. Elena shook her head. It was nothing, really. But I'm glad it made a difference. It made all the difference, Amara insisted. Their bond grew stronger with each conversation. Over the weeks, they became a steady presence in each other's lives, sharing meals, stories, and dreams for the future. Elena discovered that Liam's laughter was the best remedy for a long day. And Amara found comfort in having someone who truly understood what it meant to persevere through hardship. One evening, as Elena returned home from work, she found an envelope tucked into her mailbox. It was plain, with no return address. Curious, she opened it and pulled out a folded note and a small key. The note was written in David's neat handwriting. Thank you for being a light in our lives. You may not realize it, but your kindness started something beautiful. This key is just the beginning. More to come. David and Amara. Elena turned the key over in her hands, puzzled and intrigued. It felt heavy, as though it held the weight of something significant, though she had no idea what it could unlock. Elena couldn't stop thinking about the key. It seemed almost ordinary, with its dull brass finish and faintly worn grooves, yet the note from David and Amara made it feel anything but. She placed it on her small kitchen counter, where the sunlight caught its surface, and found herself glancing at it repeatedly as if it might offer a clue to its purpose. The next Saturday she met Amara at the market, as they had started to do regularly. They wandered the aisles, chatting as they browsed for fresh produce. Liam rode in a stroller, his little fists waving at the colorful fruit displays. Amara, Elena began cautiously, I got this. Key from you and David. I don't want to sound ungrateful, but I don't understand what it's for. Amara grinned, her expression tinged with mischief. It's not that we're trying to keep you in suspense, she said, but I think you need to see for yourself. David's been planning something special, and he didn't want to spoil the surprise. Do you have time after this? Curiosity flared in Elena's chest. Of course, she said. After they finished shopping, Amara led Elena a few blocks away from the market, weaving through quiet streets lined with small businesses. They stopped in front of a storefront with wide glass windows and a faded for lease sign taped to the door. Elena's breath hitched as she looked inside. The space was empty, save for a few stray chairs and a counter near the back wall. Sunlight streamed through the windows, creating bright pools of light on the polished wood floors. The walls, though scuffed, had potential, and the high ceilings gave the space an airy, welcoming feel. What is this place? Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. This, David said, appearing behind them with a set of papers in his hand, is yours. Elena turned to him, her brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean, mine? David smiled, his expression earnest. Amara told me about your love of baking. How you light up when you talk about the bakery you work at. She also mentioned that owning your own bakery has always been a dream of yours. Well, we wanted to make that dream a little closer to reality. He handed her the papers, and Elena scanned them quickly. They detailed a lease agreement with her name on it, the first year's rent fully paid. I don't understand, she said, her voice trembling. I can't afford this, and I don't even know where to begin. You don't have to do it alone, David assured her. We've covered the initial costs to get you started. Consider it an investment not just in your talent, but in what you bring to this community. You've already given us so much without even realizing it. It's time for us to give something back. Tears blurred Elena's vision as she clutched the papers to her chest. I don't know what to say. This is too much. It's not, Amara said gently, placing a hand on Elena's shoulder. You've earned this. You deserve this. Over the next few weeks, the empty storefront underwent a transformation. David and Amara rallied friends and neighbors to help with painting, cleaning, and assembling furniture. Elena worked tirelessly alongside them, designing the menu, testing recipes, and decorating the space to make it feel warm and inviting. The day before the grand opening, Elena stood in the middle of the now finished bakery, taking it all in. The walls were painted a soft cream, accented by rustic wooden shelves that displayed jars of flour and sugar. A glass display case near the counter gleamed, ready to hold rows of pastries and breads. Above the door hung a hand-painted sign Vargas Company. Amara walked in with Liam on her hip and smiled. "It's perfect," she said. Elena turned to her, tears shining in her eyes. "I never thought this would actually happen. I feel like I'm dreaming." "You're not," Amara replied with a grin. "You're living the dream. And you're going to be amazing." The next morning, the bakery opened its doors to the public. The air was filled with the comforting aroma of fresh bread and cinnamon, drawing people in from the streets. Friends, neighbors, and curious passers-by crowded the space, eager to support the new business. Elena spent the day behind the counter, greeting customers and serving them pastries and coffee. Amara and David were among the first to arrive, their faces glowing with pride. Even Liam seemed excited, clapping his hands and laughing as he watched the hustle and bustle. By the time the day wound down, Elena was exhausted but exhilarated. As she stood by the counter surveying the now quiet bakery, Amara and David approached her. "You did it," David said, his voice filled with admiration. "I couldn't have done it without you," Elena replied, her gratitude evident in her tone. David shook his head. "You did this. All we did was give you a nudge. The rest was you." Elena smiled, her heart swelling with a mix of pride and thankfulness. She realized that the bakery wasn't just a symbol of her hard work, it was a testament to the power of kindness, resilience, and community. And it all began with a single act of compassion in a grocery store aisle. The weeks following the grand opening of Vargas Company were a blur of activity. Word of the bakery spread quickly, and it became a gathering place for the neighborhood. Mornings were filled with the hum of conversation as customers lingered over coffee and fresh pastries. Children stopped by after school for cookies, and families flocked in on weekends to share slices of pie or loaves of bread. Elena worked tirelessly, pouring her heart into every detail. She loved experimenting with new recipes, many inspired by her mother's cooking. Her lemon tarts became a runaway favorite, followed closely by her cinnamon rolls, which customers often declared were the best they'd ever tasted. Amara and David continued to be an integral part of her journey. David offered guidance on managing the business side of the bakery, while Amara often stopped by with Liam, her cheerful presence a constant source of encouragement. Over time, Elena realized that her relationship with the couple had become something rare and precious more than friendship. It felt like family. One quiet afternoon, Elena noticed a woman hesitating near the bakery's entrance. She was holding a small child, her posture uncertain as she glanced at the window display. The scene was eerily familiar, and Elena felt a pang in her chest. She stepped out from behind the counter and opened the door with a warm smile. "Hi there, come on in." The woman looked up, startled. "Oh, I'm just looking." "That's what everyone says before they come in and fall in love with our cookies," Elena teased lightly. "Please take a seat. I'll bring you something to try." The woman hesitated but eventually stepped inside. Elena guided her to a cozy corner table and returned with a steaming cup of coffee and a small plate of pastries. The woman sat quietly for a moment, then reached for the coffee. As she sipped, her eyes softened and her shoulders relaxed. "Thank you," she murmured. "I didn't mean to take up space, it's just we've been having a hard time lately." She glanced down at her child, who was happily nibbling on a buttered roll Elena had included. "You're not taking up space," Elena said gently. "You're exactly where you're supposed to be." The woman's name was Sophia. And as she spoke, Elena learned about her struggles recently losing her job, caring for her son as a single mother, and trying to figure out her next steps. Listening to Sophia's story, Elena felt a wave of empathy. It reminded her of that moment in the grocery store when she first met Amara, the uncertainty and quiet desperation that had marked her own life for so long. "Wait here," Elena said, disappearing into the back room. When she returned, she carried a small bag filled with bread, muffins, and a jar of homemade jam. Sophia's eyes widened. "I can't accept this, you've already been so kind." "It's not about what you can or can't accept," Elena interrupted, her tone gentle but firm. "It's about what I can give. And right now I want you to have this." Sophia's lips quivered, and tears filled her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. As Sophia left the bakery with her son, Elena felt a familiar warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't the first time she had extended a hand to someone in need since opening Vargas' company, and she knew it wouldn't be the last. Every small act of kindness felt like a way of honoring the journey that had brought her here, a reminder of the moments when others had done the same for her. That evening, after closing up the bakery, Elena sat alone at one of the small tables near the window. She looked out at the street, watching as the lamplights flickered on and cast their glow over the quiet neighborhood. Her thoughts turned to David, Amara, and Liam, to the generosity that had changed her life and the unexpected twists that had brought her to this moment. She thought of the key they had given her and how it had unlocked not just a door but a world of possibility. Elena smiled as she sipped her tea, a profound sense of gratitude washing over her. She had learned that life's hardships didn't have to define you, that the smallest gestures could create ripples of change, and that hope was something you could both give and receive. Vargas' company wasn't just a bakery. It was a haven, a testament to resilience and community, and a beacon of kindness in a world that often seemed too fast and too cold. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Elena made a quiet vow to herself: no matter how successful the bakery became, she would always make time for the people who walked through her doors, the ones who needed a warm meal, a kind word, or just a moment of peace. Her heart was full, her dreams were alive, and her life was brighter than she had ever dared to imagine. She was ready for whatever came next.